Black Rifle Coffee Podcast. Kevin Reeves, Baker Levitt, Nick Norris from Protekt. Thanks for coming, man. I appreciate you.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah,
So
first time meeting you, and we're already giggling on Baker stories.
We've used all the good material already.
It's gone.
No, it's funny. We were in Midland on a dove shoot with some of the investors in Protekt, and like we're riding in the car, and so it's like it's me and Nick was a SEAL, and I've had tons of conversations with SEALs, and Andrew Pouch was an EOD guy.
Sure.
And I've heard those stories, and I was like, so like Tim, like what'd you do? And he like what was your job in the Navy? And he drove some boat.
He was a surface warfare officer,
ship
driver.
And I was like, did you like it? And he goes, fuck no. he goes, I fucking hated it. And like I could just hear you laughing.
So here's my honest opinion. I thought you were teeing it up and asking him questions to basically talk shit to him.
Uh-huh.
You were not. You were asking curiosity-based questions.
Yeah.
And I was dying. And I told Kevin when I came in, I shared the same exact story. And I'm like, I love Baker because he's genuinely curious about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and he will remember whatever you say.
Totally.
He remembers all of it.
I can tell you like what bats people are in, what units. No, but here's the thing. This is interesting. Like this kind of ties into some of the stuff we'll talk about. 2% of the U.S. population is in active duty or served prior service, so veterans. So and then
we nod our heads, but we didn't know that.
He
knows that.
I didn't know that. I pretend like I knew that.
But when you think about that, so soft guys, what percent of soft guys make up the military? So it's like there's how many of you guys all combined? Like maybe 10, 15, 20,000 tops, like on the high end.
Yeah,
like,
I was hoping you had that figure for us.
No, but like if you do, so like there's 3 Ranger battalions, or basically a force. So that's like we'll say 4,000 tops. PJs, there's like 13 of you that cover the entire globe at any given time.
Yep.
Well, no. So my old Ranger battalion, they added a whole company, maybe 2.
Mm-hmm.
They have bumped their numbers. Now this is several years ago, but yeah, there's not
But
very many. There's way
75%
more SEALs actually than there are Rangers.
Yeah.
How many Rangers then?
There's 30.
All right, so super fast math. You got 4 platoons typically in a company. Now it's 4 companies plus HHC. A platoon's 30.
Okay.
Something like that. That 4th platoon is like your attachments, other shit. So whatever the fuck that is.
So
30,
first
60,
bat,
90,
second, third bat, there's about 1,200 in each one.
Yeah, and then you got, regimental headquarters, like all your S shops.
So 4,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody correct me. I don't know.
Yeah, so like,
right
that makes up 75% of the casualties. This come from the soft community, believe it or not. Special ops community, yeah.
Interesting.
General Huttenmacher told me that. Special Operations Warrior Foundation.
The more you know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But the point of that is that like people, civilians, there's way more of us than there are of you, and the most basic thing that every single person that served in the military has in common is like boot camp or basic training. As a civilian, we don't have exposure to that. And it's not like information you pick up on the street growing up, like what is a surface warfare officer? Who knows what any of that is?
Yeah. Well, and then even the cross-service titles. And so, like, honestly, man, Navy, I deal with and work with SEALs for years and years.
Yeah.
I know that. Your rank structure, the names. A buddy of mine the other day works in my hometown. He's like, I was teasing him. He's a Navy guy. And I go, so you're a seaman. He worked on an aircraft carrier. He's like, actually, I'm a airman. I go, no, I thought we owned airmen in PJ land,
right.
But
their whole like ranking system is super bizarre, and the most like demoralizing. I think it's called in the SEAL community. You call it your rating.
Sure.
So it's not like Nick Norris Navy SEAL or Trevor Thompson Navy SEAL. It's like Trevor Thompson like boatswain, coxswain man.
Used to be
and
like
they changed it.
They changed it. So you became a SEAL as a rating. So you could actually go into boot camp under like a SEAL contract, a SEAL challenge contract, and you didn't have to go to like BM school or CT school or whatever.
They were very unflattering names for like job titles. It's like I thought this guy was a SEAL.
3rd class.
Yeah.
I didn't
SEAL.
I didn't understand it either. That additional rating. Like I'm talking to a buddy of mine who's a dev group guy and all the shit. He's like, no, I came in as like a blah blah, and then became a SEAL, but I maintained that rating of some shit as a title. I'm like,
Until they switched over to SEAL operator as the rating, so then you became an SO. So instead of
SO2,
when was that?
It was when I was in 03 to 13, and the guys that I went through buds with still had ratings. They went through boot camp, went to boatswain's mate school, and did that, and then went to buds. I think, it had to be after like 2000 4 or 5.
Okay.
Somebody will correct me on it, but
Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about.
But yeah, it's like, how often do you get to talk to a person as a civilian that like drove like a military boat as a job, and it's like, oh, well, like what's it like driving that boat? He's like, it was a big, slow, clunky piece of shit.
Tim should have been honored, and yet he snapped back at you
Yeah.
and thought you were
He hated it.
you were belittling him
Yeah.
and dressing him down.
No, but it's
as did I.
Yeah, but it's like it's just I think it's super interesting. You know, like it takes saying is it takes an army to accomplish something. You know, I don't know. I'm super curious about it. I never did it, and I just like meeting people that did it so I can ask them questions.
Dude,
Some are talkative. Some are like, it takes a lot of guys like TFO guys or like DevGru guys or CAG guys. It takes a minute to crack the shell, to be like, no, like listen, like I'm like legitimately curious about like I don't want secrets
It took
or
me a
like
second to
gunfights.
Yeah. Yep.
But like what was the hardest thing you ever did? You ever been scared? Like you ever shit your pants? In a
Yeah,
gunfight?
but when you approach Tim like that, or you ask me a question like that,
Yeah.
I immediately assume it's like one of us talking to each other,
Fucking with
and
it,
you're doing it to talk shit
Yeah.
to me. You're teeing me up to actually take myself so seriously
Yeah.
that I give you a legit answer to it,
Yeah.
100%.
like
I
baiting me.
made the mistake yesterday of doing that to Scott Bollinger,
Oh.
and I got a 30-minute answer.
Oh, really?
Because I always thought Scott like hated me. He actually, I think he likes me.
Oh.
Scott's like Evan's like chief of staff. He's like
Uh-huh.
a 22-year, 19th group guy. He's a hulking like 6'5". He's just
Yeah, he's a giant.
he's a giant man, and like he just walks around.
Really
doesn't
nice,
smile.
too.
He really is. And I was like, all right, man, shoot me straight. What was the hardest part of the Q course? And you can't say the Delta program because we all know that's hard. What was the physically hardest part? And he told me this like 30-minute story, and I was like, man, I just wanted like a 10-second hit. Like, I just want to get in and get out.
That's where Baker draws the line.
Yeah, yeah.
His curiosity
Yeah.
ends, and he only has a 10-second attention span.
Minimal details. Like,
Yeah, you
that's
should.
just-
I like to preface those. Like, okay, answer to X, 30 seconds go.
yeah.
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
All right,
don't
so
think
we
I get
have
that one.
a lot to cover.
A lot of cool
today.
shit to talk
A lot of synergy. However, where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Chicago.
Okay,
Yeah.
Chi-town.
Yeah, Chicago. South Side, actually in the city.
Okay.
But like blue collar Irish Catholic neighborhood. You identify yourself with the parish, like the Catholic church that you're
course.
going to. Everybody's parents were either police officers, firefighters, or tradesmen. And then I ended up going to high school in a pretty rough neighborhood, Chicago Mount Carmel. It's like an all-boys Catholic high school. That's what we do in Chicago. You go to all-guys high school.
Okay.
And yeah.
Sports?
I wrestled. I played football initially. Figured out that at 5'6", 135 pounds, I wasn't going to be a starter.
That's a weight class, though, so you...
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, but I ended up taking up wrestling late.
Yeah.
Started freshman year, and I owe a lot to it. It's like the thing that built all the discipline and kind of like self-motivation.
I agree. Wrestlers are different humans. I wrestled a little bit in high school. Not accomplished, not good, but it definitely develops a work ethic.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't label myself as good or accomplished. But I struggled. I wrestled behind some really talented guys.
Yeah.
A lot of guys from our high school would end up going to like Big Ten schools and wrestle, and they were just better than me.
You know who else attributes their success in their early military career to wrestling? Is Jericho Denman.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I did
yeah.
not know that.
Yes, I
He
did know
said
that.
I think they lived in Germany at the time, and like the wrestling coach was like a pastor or something,
Okay.
a chaplain,
All right.
and he said that their wrestling practices were so hard, it made like Ranger School like not easy, but like very
Oh, yeah.
very very bearable.
It's a grind. It's for
Yeah.
sure a grind, at least in my limited experience. This is fucking delicious. This
Thank you.
watermelon
Yeah.
hydration. Yeah.
Brand new.
I haven't had that one yet.
Speaking of
Yeah.
hydration, I mean, that was part of the reason wrestling practices in high school. I mean, I didn't wrestle in college. They got even worse, supposedly. My roommate in college was a collegiate wrestler.
It's horrible.
You're training dehydrated a lot of the time because you're cutting weight. I cut 30 pounds my senior year from like 175 to
You cut
145.
30?
You had to fit the lineup, right? So
Yeah.
like you learn how to, like you have to be a team player. There's a gap in the lineup. I struggled. I wasn't as talented as other guys, so I had to cut the weight to fill a gap in the lineup. So training dehydrated, it's like terrible.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
Well, for even head trauma. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
huge thing. You look at when they were cutting weight at UFC, still to this day.
Totally.
That lack of fluid and then getting smashed in the head.
Yeah.
You've lost a barrier of protection that you walk around with daily.
Oh yeah, you don't have the buffer, right, when
Yeah.
you're taking that concussive force. So yeah, as a wrestler, I would concur with the assessment that like some of the stuff I did wrestling in high school in practice in those conditions was harder than things that I did in the military.
Really?
Not all of it, right? Being cold in buds was terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But yeah, it definitely preps you. Like
Okay.
creates that discipline.
So high school, what's after high school? College, where'd you go?
Went to the Naval Academy.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Oh, fuck. I'm talking to it. You come off as enlisted, and I just realized you're a fucking officer.
And you asked the question, I had to be honest. A midshipman tells no lie. We are
Where's-
persons of
your
integrity.
ring? Aren't you supposed to wear your Naval Academy
I
ring?
have it. I put it in the bag. I didn't want to like let the
Actually,
cat out of the
this is
bag and-
hilarious.
I went and chased down Ben Miller, and when I introduced Ben to him, I was like, Naval Academy guy. His face lit up. he's like, I'm so happy to find a fellow Academy
Finally
guy.
another dude that
Yeah.
gets teased.
I've been
Yeah.
belittled by everybody around
Yeah.
here. Because
Actually, grew up in Ohio. My folks were like, "You got to go to college. Got to go to college. Got to go to college."
Mine were the same.
For whatever reason, we used to go to Florida, and I think we were passing by road tripping. You know, we'd road trip to Florida, come back, and we stopped at the Naval Academy. We did the tour.
Okay.
And I remember seeing like the uniforms and the glass and all the shit and the water. I'm like, well, I'm gonna go here. I'm not smart, so that never happened. But I remember being all about it.
How old
Yeah.
were you?
Oh gosh, I was probably 12, maybe
Yeah.
10. I don't know, somewhere
Yeah.
in there.
First, second, third grade, we lived in New York City, St. Patrick's 101st Street. You identify with the parish. My stepfather at the time, West Point grad, was at Columbia getting his master's degree, and then he was going to teach at West Point. And so here I am, this little first, second grader from Georgia, and we went up to view West Point in November, and it was just started snowing a little bit, and I was like, oh my God, it's the most to this day. As far as like awe-inspiring things I've seen as a kid, like I'll never forget it.
I don't know if I place this memory or if it's actually a memory. You will know. Is there a Marine Corps uniform, sword and all, in behind glass?
There probably is. There's a lot of stuff behind glass.
I just
there.
remember looking at that. I'm like, I do this, I get a fucking sword.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
was all in.
Yeah.
10, 12 years old. I'm like, fuck yeah.
I'm sure if I can't recall the name of the hall, but there's like the big kind of ceremonial like loose hall,
Yep.
and they have like all the cases with like John Paul Jones' sword and stuff like that.
I mean, let's face it, all of those, like West Point, Naval Academy.
Yeah.
I live by the Air Force Academy in Colorado, and I got a turnkey tour from a buddy of mine who I was doing PJ stuff with. He was actually a combat rescue officer. We were still friends, but I didn't like him. I'm kidding. He's awesome, dude. but he like walked us through. We went to look at everything. They all own some of the best real estate in the entire country.
Yeah,
and the
it's
Air
beautiful.
Force Academy is literally sitting where I would place my house if I was Lewis and Clark, and I'm like, fucking right there looks perfect.
yeah,
And the Air Force Academy's like, nah, we'll keep that.
yeah. You don't get to enjoy it while you're there at all. It's like being in prison.
I enjoy it because my son played lacrosse there.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, but I think West Point is very strategically located at the time. And they chose that I think it was a very strategic location.
And then the Air Force went, we like pretty things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, you got to the Naval Academy.
Naval Academy.
How most people that go to the Naval Academy or the service academies go with the intentions of playing a sport, or they have to participate in some sport.
Sure.
Right. That doesn't last past the freshman year, right? Because it is hard as hell at those schools.
Well, it's mandated that you participate in like some type of athletics, right? So if you're either a varsity athlete, like you got recruited to go play football or wrestle or play basketball, or you got to play an intramural. So you play like intramural soccer, or there's clubs like you can do marathon club. I went there. I mean, I was a wrestler. I was thinking about wrestling there. Did not. So I played some rugby, and then I was in the marathon club as a kind of like a loophole in order to start adventure racing and ultra running.
Oh, okay.
To your point about like going to the academy when you were like 10, 12, like I just had like this innate desire. Like I wanted to be in the military. Probably in 7th grade. I was probably 11, 12 years old, and I wanted to be a SEAL.
Yeah.
So it like started super early.
Well, how did you know what SEALs were? Like, how did you get exposure? Like, so Dave Castro, Castro from CrossFit.
Yeah.
Dave Castro went and saw The Rock his senior year of high school, and was like, I want to become a SEAL. Okay. And that is why he became a SEAL. What triggered you wanting to be a SEAL?
So one of my closest friends that I went to grade school with, a guy named Mike Hurley, was way into the military. He was like he was into it before I was. He ended up serving in the Marine Corps for a while, and then Mike told me, like, hey man, like this is the military, like told me all about it. And then I asked him, I'm like, okay, what, are there special things you can do. And I think Mike pointed to the SEAL teams of many, special forces, like anything soft related. And I read Richard Marcinko's book, Road Warrior.
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
So that was the inspiration in 7th grade. I'll be honest. And
Demolition Deck.
Yeah, but it's honestly, and this is important, and we're being jovial about it. But everybody that asked me, I had a kid here the other day. He's working here. He signed up, and he said, "Well, what would you do?" I go, "It doesn't matter what you choose, but pick an elite unit that you will go to." I like to say you will go to instead of you'll try to go to, because I think it's a mindset thing.
Yep.
But you'll have people do the recruiter. I mean, this is honestly a statement that we put out over and over again. Like, don't trust that recruiter because he's got quotas. But if you go someplace special, you'll get funding, which is super important, and ultimately missions. If you go to regular, great. Everybody stands up, steps up to the plate, does their service, super respectful. But if you want to do a career, it's like, why not shoot for that, rad thing? Go to the SEAL teams or try out for SF. I think you can get contracts for SF now.
Well, I think especially when you're not in wartime years, like there's going to be, typically there's going to be work and employment for SOF.
Right.
I will say, I served from 03 to 13. Some of the guys I served with that were conventional Marine Corps infantry, Army infantry.
Hard as shit.
Some of the most heroic people that I had the privilege of serving with in combat. And during wartime, if you're going into a combat arms profession, you're going to get some. And sometimes those guys saw more. I'll tell you, they saw more daylight combat, like gnarly combat
100%.
than any of us, right?
Yep.
For at least from the SOF community and the SEAL teams that I was deployed with.
That's a great perspective, though. That I hadn't thought about the non-wartime, trying to go to special operations. Not only, could you have mission sets that you're able to accomplish, but the high level of training and things that you could get along that path after the GWAT. I haven't fully metabolized the fact that I'm still in the Guard, so it's like, what the fuck do I do now? I don't have a deployment on the books.
Right.
I don't have anything.
Yeah.
But that's an awesome perspective. Actually.
Yeah, it's kind of perplexing for me. I talk to guys that are still in. Like, I'll see guys at, like, the climbing gym, and they're, like, young SEALs. You can just pick them out of the crowd.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you guys doing now? And, like, some of the guys, like, they're not even deploying, right? They're just, like, on ready, and they're training the entire time. And that's how it was, pre 9/11.
I was pre 9/11, barely.
Okay.
I literally showed up to meet Jericho Denman in August, I think, and then we jumped into Germany as a training exercise, and September 11th kicked off while we were in Germany.
Okay.
On my very first TDY, and I'd been there for maybe a week, not even, like 4 days before the workup to go to Germany.
Yeah.
So I was like, whoa,
All right.
shit just got real.
Things are going to get different.
It's interesting that you said that about like seeing like daylight combat stuff, because like I know guys that were Green Berets for 15, 20 years, and maybe had one deployment under their belt, and then you look at some guys that were like 101st, 82nd, 10th Mountain guys, and like all they did was fight.
Yeah.
But they might have had one deployment, but it was a year long.
Yeah.
Instead of 3 months, jorts or whatever rotation they were on. Yeah. And when you say daylight, I can remember specifically my very first daylight mission out of Ramadi, and it was fucking terrifying. Because we did everything else. It was High Valley Target. We had to go. And it was...
What year in Ramadi?
I think it was 3.
Okay.
No, I lied. It was 4. It was for sure 4. We got spun up, cruised over to Shark Base, and I was perplexed. I'm like, we've done everything at night.
Oh.
Everything, minus patrols in Afghanistan, totally different. But Iraq shit, everything was at night, and this was the first daytime one. Number one, I'm sweating fucking profusely.
Sure.
And I'm trying to figure out my iPro situation because shit's all
it's fogging up.
I'm fogged up. I'm fucked up.
It always does.
And I'm running an SR-25.
Okay.
So I'm like, fucking glasses, see, I'm going to lose an eye and not get to enjoy the firefight. But I distinctly remember that first daytime.
Yeah.
And it is fucking terrifying.
I mean,
and it was one of those dry holes where you show up and the food's hot. You're like, fuck. We just drove across town during the day.
Yeah.
Like, risked all that shit for fucking, fuck that.
We did. I mean, when I went through BUDS in 03, got to SEAL Team 3 in 05, and then we deployed to Al Anbar in 06. So, like, Jocko Willink's troop was our sister troop in Ramadi, and then we were outside of Chaldea. But as a young SEAL, like, I'm a new guy SEAL officer. I was like one of 2 or 3 new guys. There was like 2 officers and 1 enlisted guy.
Right.
But the only new guys. Everything we did in training was nighttime, kind of direct action, all that stuff, all on nods. And then we show up in country and we find out, like, the enemy's fighting during the day for the most part.
Yep.
Like, and if we're going to support the conventional kind of units, right, that are out there holding terrain on a daily basis and going out and doing daylight patrols to contact. Like, we're not just going to stay out at night.
Right.
Like, I mean, frankly, within our little group, I mean, we're like, hey, like, we're not going to be cowards. Like, these guys live in a shithole on a combat outpost, and they are literally going out every single day and then coming back and getting mortared all day long.
Yeah.
Like, you know, past the forward trace, right, into enemy terrain. And like the first day we went out there, we like drove into this combat outpost. It's called OK Corral or Cowboy, just north of the 611 bridge in Al-Anbar province. And there were Marine Corps 3-5 was the MIT that was there training the Iraqi conventionals. And they were like, hey guys, we're like, hey, how do we support? They're like, hey, we're going out at a like a battalion-sized daylight patrol, like into, you know, enemy-controlled territory. Hey, count us in. We'll take our Iraqi soft guys. We went out, and like, no kidding, 50 yards outside of outside of the gate, walking through a farm field, like we had an IED go high order, and like the farm field behind us, like full on like Vietnam like platoon movie, like dirt falling on people, guys yelling. Like I remember it vividly. Strong pointing a house, and then the rest of the 6 hours of patrolling in the heat.
Yeah.
Like guys come back, and like you thought training was hard. I had guys that are like just complete animals, like my automatic weapons gunners. I mean, heat stroke basically.
Gassed.
I had to like radio back to our troop commander and say like, hey, boss, I know we told you we were going to do like 2 patrols a day for like 6 days and then come back. Like I got 2 guys that are like going to die if we like put body armor on and go out for another patrol like this evening. But crazy.
That's rough. So that was your first go.
It was my first combat operation as a young SEAL officer was
gnarly.
running as the TL, like running in that patrol. Like,
How old were you?
I was 23.
Oof. Young.
Yeah, 23. Yeah, I mean, I was a new guy too, right? So I was figuring shit out.
Yeah, that's a steep learning curve.
But I mean, that was our Petraeus. It was his counterinsurgency doctrine. It was get outside the armor, be amongst the people, and I mean, the only way to support, you know, the Marines that were taking the fight to the enemy was to support them.
Be with them. Yeah.
And I think our deployment in 06, we were able to kind of morph it and control what we did to be like the highest value to the units that are out there doing all the training with the conventional Iraqis by like employing sniper weapon systems. We carried a ton of firepower, like automatic weapons. You know, I got to, you know, send some 155s from like the Paladin battery.
Hold on, wait. What is that?
We talked about this too. We said,
What's a 155?
so like an artillery round, like a massive. I mean, it sounds like a Volkswagen is coming overhead.
Yeah.
So these giant cannons that were back on Habbaniyah, 15 kilometers away, and you're calling it fire.
It's kind of terrifying, right?
Well, because the trajectory at 15 kilometers hitting a target that's like 600, 700 meters away from you, it's coming overhead. You think about the angle of fire.
This thing. So we had that in Ramadi.
Okay. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
you had this hill. Can't remember what the fuck it was called. There's a cannon. There's a couple cannons sitting on top of this thing. Here's me, just tuck, cruising out with my guys. Here's the bad guys. I'm trusting, and they're fantastic.
They are.
Still scary as shit. But they're gonna lob this thing based on things that we're telling them.
Yeah. The guys that never do this, right? Like I had like an in brief with like the artillerymen that were on Habbaniyah. They're like, okay, so you're gonna do it. You're gonna be bearing in distance, and like I got my call for fire. Yep. I'm like,
double check.
I've never done this before. Not even in training with live rounds. Like, right? I like did a check off with them like on base, like virtually, like just
this is me, my location.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. I got like a compass out.
But those things are super accurate, right? Like they can hit a dime, right? If you give them the right coordinates.
I mean, yes, they're accurate, but it's the game of telephone that scared me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was young doing this stuff, even as a sniper dude. Sometimes if you didn't have an FO or we didn't have FOs, we had like ETACs way back then.
What's an FO?
Forward observer.
Okay.
And then ETAC's like today's JTAC.
Okay.
That's a guy that calls air and does all the things. I'm being trusted with this. I'm like, oh, and luckily we went to Gunsmoke down in Kentucky, and
Okay.
we'd train with the 160th and do aerial platform shooting, like all the cool shit,
Yep.
and call in the DAPs and the 130s. But this is real deal.
Yeah.
So not only are you double checking your call for fire, you're like, if I fuck this up, it's not on them, but it is a game of telephone.
Yep.
Like I might be asking a dude like, what's the azimuth? Double check the thing. Let's get a distance confirmation, and then I have to relay all that. And sometimes shit gets fucked up. I'm not saying.
And that thing's coming overhead low. I mean, you hear it coming overhead, and it's like,
Yep.
and then the spall that thing's. I mean, and maybe the targets we were shooting at, like, a click out, 1,000 yards out.
Yep.
But I mean, taking down palm trees and palm groves, just like the spall coming off the round. I mean, it's epic. It was the most consistent, like, fire support you had, right? So like, you don't have F-18s or rotary wing overhead
Right.
all the time. You always have that Paladin battery, the artillery guys on Habanilla. So it was killer to know that you had that, especially like when we did a majority of our combat operations were daylight.
Yeah, that's a
support
totally different
Petraeus
game
and
that I
all
was.
that.
Yeah, I played a different game back when I was in.
Yeah.
So you were calling in 155s.
I
And
got
what
to-
happens when one of those things hits a house?
I mean,
Mostly pieces.
yeah. I mean, it
It's
would.
big.
Yeah.
Big boom.
I mean,
Big boom.
and it's on you too, right? Like and this got even more critical in Afghanistan, but I mean, collateral damage, right? The rules of engagement got tighter as the war years dragged on, and like by 2010, like my next deployment was to Afghanistan, and the ROEs for like calling fire, like weapons release, were like, you need to guarantee no collateral damage, no civilian casualties.
And I say this loosely, but it's referred to a lot of times like, well, it used to be the Wild West. Wild West was out of necessity. You know, like we need this now because something bad's going on. But then as more eyes, I mean, we were just talking about the guy that got charged for murder in a foreign country. Like, to me, in my time when it was kicking doors and doing things, I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Like that doesn't equate for me versus the accountability that came after the fact.
Yeah.
And I actually attribute some of that, and this could just be bro science, but I'm a professional at that. I have a doctorate. It could be just social media and people realizing that you can take a video and point the camera this way and tell one narrative while the narrative over here is much different.
Yep.
But it started getting kind of nasty within the military, and the ROI or the ROE would completely change.
Yeah, I mean, it was stressful. Obviously it doesn't feel good when you're taking incoming rounds from enemy, but I mean, a necessity. I mean, I came from perspective of being a element leader on the ground, and if things go like you had to start really hammering that like kind of battlefield ethics at that point home, right? Like you took it very seriously because, to your point, one bad situation, right?
You're fucked.
I mean, like that the enemy. I mean, in Afghanistan, Taliban would spin it as effectively as our
Fox or
our
CNN.
people.
Yeah.
100%. And then you lose. You're fighting for like the support of the local villages and stuff, which was like a total uphill battle. Like we're not going to win. They know we're not going to be here forever. They're not going to want to take our side. And then if the Taliban spins something as, these guys killed a bunch of civilians, like you're done. You're not going to get any support. And then it's safe harbor for enemy forces that are around your fire base.
And by support, you had to not play nice, but you had to aid the locals and provide value to them in order for them to go like, okay, these guys are actually doing some good. Let's tell them a little bit so that they can help us get rid of these bad dudes. So it was a relationship. It had to be a symbiotic relationship.
It's a human right? They're human beings. You have to build trust and win over confidence.
Right.
Or they don't help you.
Yeah.
It's no different, right?
Yeah, it's
So
not one step.
it sounds like it's a never-ending mindfuck. Combat.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just one step forward, two steps back if something goes wrong. It's one step forward, I'll never talk to you again. You're never getting help.
Yeah.
And you can fuck off till eternity if they perceive that you fucked up another village or civilians or family or whatever that is.
Yeah.
So
A lot more complex than you thought it was.
Right.
It wasn't just like good guys and bad guys. Like they're over there, we're here.
But that's one of the we were talking about like my curiosity. It's like, I think ultimately you as a civilian that never did any of this, you want to hear the stories. And then as you get older and more mature in the war stories, you've heard a zillion of them. It's like, okay, there's a lot of guys that come back with problems. And like there's a humanity component. And I think, and this kind of segues into another topic we can bring up, but like, how can civilians like I don't like the word empathize. I really hate that word, but it's like, how can civilians understand what you guys are talking about? So like most civilians, when they think of stress in combat and stuff, I think of bullets flying over your head or your buddy getting shot or, some other, American getting killed or whatever. But it sounds to me like there's just layer upon layer upon layer of anxiety that has nothing to do with someone shooting a bullet over your head. It's not necessarily doctrine, but it's been studied. I mean, even as a young guy, and I'm not a big reader by any means, I do listen to the shit out of some Audible. But on killing, on combat, some of that references, not necessarily, it's not the bullets flying thing. It's the, what is your role, right? Are you an outside the wire guy where you can proactively protect yourself, but you're in a heightened state, but you're doing that heightened state over and over and over again, which contributes to adrenal fatigue and a million different things that affect you systemically. And then conversely, those within the wire feel like they can't proactively defend themselves necessarily, and they're just sitting there like monkeys in a barrel getting shot at with, like we talked about, mortar rounds. So either one of those, it's that highs and lows constantly. And that's why, as we get into my favorite subject with it, which is mental health, things like stellate ganglion blocks and things like that, guys are coming back with a broken system, and they're not able to regulate that epi-norepi, and that doesn't even really have to do with the gunfights.
Right.
It has to do with the state of readiness for a prolonged period of time.
Well, the gunfights were like this much of your deployed time. If you really say like the time that you were actually behind your rifle, sending rounds at an enemy, you taking rounds, such a small percentage of the time on the ground. Most of the time is boredom.
Yeah.
Boredom, but it's peaked with like these intense moments.
Yeah.
But in that period of boredom, you're like living in this chronic state of stress, right? You're on like
100%.
hyper readiness.
Yellow light. It's a yellow light. Constant.
For 3, 6, 12 months, 18 months, depending on your deployment cycle.
Absolutely. And then there's a whole argument for, early on we'd do hits like every night, just try and find people, right? Trying to do the mission. But then I think about it, patrolling in Afghanistan during Winter Strike when a guy named Blessing was killed. He was actually our armorer driving a vehicle, which is a whole nother story. But you are living in the environment where you're hunting humans, which means that there is no downtime. You're walking along, bebopping along with your gun, looking. You find yourself being like, oh, man, I'm being a little bit lackadaisical. And you're like, I have to remind myself, I am in Afghanistan. And bad shit can happen or just happen or will happen. Yeah. But then you're sleeping, you're eating, you're shitting. Like, everything is happening, and you're in that environment 100% of the time.
So you waited until the last minute to go holiday shopping? Don't worry, Black Rifle Coffee has just the thing to get you off the naughty list. Give the gift that keeps giving with the prepaid coffee subscription. This gift will impress any coffee lover, and you won't have to worry about it arriving too late for the holidays either. The Coffee Club 3-month, 6-month, and 12-month subscription options give you the freedom to choose your own plan, and the longer the subscription, the more you save. A 12-month prepaid subscription saves you an equivalent of 1 free shipment each year. Head to blackriflecoffee.com/gift subscriptions, and boom, your last-minute holiday shopping is done.
But did you guys, like, in that environment, do you ever sleep well? Like, do you ever get, like, a good night's sleep?
You acclimate to it. I don't know if it's actually what I would define as restful sleep.
Yeah.
But you just start to, like, get used to it, right?
I am maybe an anomaly, but I can sleep through some shit. I mean, I used to be able to. It wasn't until much later that I struggled with sleep and other things. And it's not nightmares. I'm not waking up about anything. I definitely dream about something and wake up angry. I never recall any of it. But in combat, you would get sleep. It's not for the duration of time that's healthy. And a lot of that in conjunction with, like, we can talk about alcohol abuse and sleep patterns when you get back. But when your sleep is interrupted, you can't file the day's stress correctly, and that's where post-traumatic stress comes from. I don't say disorder because you can fuck off with that word. But in combat, I imagine it's the same as drinking yourself to sleep, and you're actually not, you're blacked out or you're passed out or whatever that is, but you're actually not storing those memories the way that your brain's designed. So that's where post-traumatic stress comes from, with or without firefights, to be honest.
Well, the common ground between the combat veteran and, let's say, the guy that never served, but, he's stressed out every single day because he's working hard, he's trying to feed his family, and he has all these responsibilities on his plate, is chronic stress, terrible sleep, right? Disruptive sleep. I mean, the kind of two go hand in hand, right? High stress levels yield poor sleep. And that stuff outside of kind of the concussive injury or like
Oh, TBI, yeah.
the TBI stuff. I mean, but I would say stress, and then the fact that you're not getting well rested, you're not getting good sleep. That stuff contributes. I mean, it's a form of micro TBI.
Yes.
Anyway.
Absolutely.
So like, you could be dealing with some of the same issues on the mental health front that a guy that served in combat is dealing with, because this stuff adds up, right? It's like, it's compounding. If you spend 20, 30 years of your life stressed out every single day, going to work, doing this stuff, and your sleep's terrible and you're drinking yourself to sleep every single night, I mean, you're going to deal with some mental health shit, right?
Right.
You're going to.
I had a super dark period of my life, drinking way the fuck too much, gigantic, stressful situation. I got fucking shingles at under 40, which is largely attributed to stress. Had nothing to do with combat.
Yeah.
None.
Likewise.
Really?
Zero.
Have you ever had any bad moments, like problems?
I was in a so I transitioned out in 2013.
Okay.
For a number of reasons. Namely, I had a younger brother killed in an inbounds avalanche in Colorado, skiing. And my wife was pregnant with our daughter at the time. We had just told my brother's family that we were going to have a daughter. So I exited at that point. And I bring that up because, I got out and I immediately kind of disassociated from the fact that I was like probably dealing with some shit. And I just poured myself into a follow-on career. Went into commercial real estate, worked myself to death, never saw my family. And 4 years post-transition, I probably hit rock bottom. Felt completely apathetic. I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I felt super agitated, would snap. I was angry. I got to the point where sitting across the table from people in normal conversation, I would just like, there was something I was like, I don't want to be around this person. Like excuse myself from meeting. So yeah, I was not in a good place. And
did you have any of those like characteristics or behaviors while active?
No, you know what?
So totally foreign behavior.
Yeah, it manifested like it was a delayed onset, right?
Okay.
It was like 4 years later, and the story is the same, right? When you talk to a bunch of vets, right, the guys typically will be okay
cooking
when they get
along.
out, and definitely during service. Like you are so engaged, you have this high purpose job. Everybody supports you in your family, right? Your wife, your kids, they know, hey, I'm doing good work.
You're the man.
You're the man. I can do this, right? You get out, you lost that purpose, you lost the community and the connection, right? Because that's a big part of it. I ran away from it. I had to I was like, hey, I need to reinvent myself. I need to prove to everyone that I can be something that's successful outside of the SEAL
I'm
teams.
just not a SEAL. I'm more than a SEAL.
I'm more than a SEAL.
Well, not just that, but I also think, because I found myself doing it right before, like, multiple dark moments in my life, I dive so deeply and wholeheartedly into whatever I'm doing with an immense amount of loyalty, and a lot of times it doesn't have loyalty for you, and you're trying to distract yourself.
Totally.
You're staying busy in order to try to find that fulfillment that people rarely find, because you just left your tribe, you left your mission, you left your purpose, and now you're just like, well, fuck, man, I'm going to be the best at this, but what is this? Selling houses? Did it make you feel awesome?
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, I'm not.
No,
you're
right. You're hunting for a replacement.
Yep.
So you don't have to deal with the stuff that you've been compartmentalizing, locking away for
100%.
years. And I'll say, like, the common trait amongst a lot of the guys that I've connected with that served in combat is this innate ability to compartmentalize emotion. And it typically starts because of shit that the adversity that they dealt with in childhood. And that can be the full range of things. It could be physical abuse, mental abuse, unfortunate like upbringing in like a impoverished,
Sexual abuse, the whole gamut.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the guys that end up going into like SOF or any combat arms profession, they got good at locking that shit away and saying, hey, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to be successful at whatever I'm going to do. I'm not going to let this stuff bring me down. And then they go into this career path where it pays to not have emotion clouding your judgment in a high stress scenario.
100%. I think there's some doctrine coming out, or it's been talked about. I probably pulled it from another podcast because I listen to all kinds of shit. That most folks that in our communities that suffer from post-traumatic stress had basically an inkling to develop that prior to.
Yeah.
Just like you're saying. But they're like studying, and it's not like I had a great childhood.
I did as well.
I couldn't put my finger on any one thing, but I know that I can bury some shit deep and never think about it again.
I think you can be a high performer that had a beautiful childhood, but you demand perfection of yourself, and that like kind of need to be perfect and better than everybody else kind of forces you to compartmentalize all the emotion.
Yeah,
and
that makes
everything
sense.
else.
Yeah.
And I think it's like guys exit then, right? In this superhuman trait that makes it's their superpower, like to be able to compartmentalize in a stressful situation. It then becomes your worst enemy.
Yep.
So now you continue to try to throw shit in the box, right? And the box is just like overflowing, right? Like you can't keep the lid closed. Yeah. And then like life changes. You have to confront your wife and your kids and your friends and this new job and coworkers that have no common experience, right?
Yeah, you were a wolf amongst wolves, and now I hate to use this analogy, but you're out in the civilian world and you're surrounded by sheep. Yeah. And I could see how that could be a challenge. Like you are amongst guys who are some of the most vetted people in the world. Overachievers, overperformers, goal-oriented dudes. Failure is not an option. And then you get into the civilian world, and you're not around those type of people. And I can understand there's a degree of animosity. Like, look at that piece of shit. Yeah. Like, I fucking hate this guy. I hate that guy. I understand that. That makes sense.
Well, you don't have anybody, like I was saying, I ran from it. I ran from the community. The guys that I loved and I served with in combat, I wanted to try proving that I can be something more than that. And I've come full circle now. The magic solution is actually getting back in touch with those guys. Yeah. I think having the ability to like connect, be vulnerable, off gas, and vent some of this stuff. I mean, that's really what we're trying to help guys do now.
Absolutely.
I mean, I needed it.
Yep.
Like I started to connect with guys when I was struggling. Actually, like one of the guys I was like throwing a name out earlier to see like if you knew him. The two of us ran into each other at a TMS clinic. Okay. We mentioned it out there. Like transcranial magnetic stimulation was kind of like step one for me trying to figure out, problem solve. I run into a guy that I had served with in the SEAL teams randomly in the lobby of this thing that's designed to help you with mental health type stuff. And because I trusted him, he was like a friendly, right? It was like, okay. I felt okay opening up and saying like, hey man, this is what I'm dealing with. And lo and behold, he reciprocated because I was vulnerable. And his shit was the same as mine, right?
It is so fucking important just to open up your mouth and be candid about shit.
Sure.
I've told the story more than once, but I was in the parking lot the first trip that I came here when Evan said, come out and check it out. I'd had that offer multiple times, and for whatever reason, it clicked this time. I'm like, you know what? I should probably try to figure out something other than slinging guns and being overseas. And I was talking to some of our guys, and I was just, again, verbalizing like, yeah, I'm fucked up, and this is why. That has been super beneficial moving forward. And it's not a perspective when you're talking to civilians of like, look at this fucking guy. I have to remind myself to be compassionate towards those things because I know I can be callous. I know I can be like, really? You're upset because of Twitter or fucking, I don't know, some bullshit? But that's their issue. But in this community that's, created here in Black Rifle and in Protekt or wherever else, it's really important to be verbal. So I was at my unit, and one of the younger dudes, he mentioned like one thing that caught my attention. And he's not younger. He's been doing it, 10, 12 years. Like he's done a lot of the things. He mentioned number 2, and I was like, we need to sit down. We need to talk. Lack of sleep, headaches, visual disturbance, vestibular shit, like balance issues. I was like, hey, dude, here's why I'm fucked up, and here's why this is what I look like on paper. You should get some help now. Yeah. And he was like, dude, I didn't realize any of that. Like, can we talk more? I'm like, fuck yeah, I don't give a shit. That's why I love this platform, is to talk about this shit and talk to dudes like you. Like, I'm gifted to be able to have
It's a blessing, man. I mean, and when it comes from somebody that they respect, that has been kind of the, hey, this is the older guy. He's the one that has all the experience. I want to be like that person. When that person is vulnerable and kind of opens them up, dude, like the floodgates open, and then it becomes normal, right? Like that person, that younger guy's like, this is okay.
Absolutely.
Like he approves of me actually sharing some of the stuff that I'm struggling about.
Yep. I'm always super vocal with everybody. Like, what's going on? And because I don't give a fuck. I mean, what are you going to do? Shave my head and send me back in the military? I don't care.
Wait, are you going to judge me over that? I mean, if I'm judged because I'm sharing with my friends or other people that I'm struggling. I mean, we're all human beings, man. We struggle. Like, We're not robots. Like that's a normal thing, and it's a stigma, right? It's been associated with mental health for years,
Yeah,
right?
fuck that thing. Say something, because I've sat there in my, my darkness, my dark times, and I've said nothing to anybody.
You don't want to show weakness.
It's because you're built that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was fostered. Like, you're a little fucked up, you're a little tired, you're this or that. Just suck it up, dude.
Take a knee and have some water.
Yeah, take a knee, face out, take some, like, that whole mentality.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck it, dude. I can still do my job.
Yep.
For sure. But I definitely need to vocalize that I need some help.
Do you guys remember who the first, like, soft community dude that came out and was saying, I need help and I'm fucked up?
Fuck, that's an excellent
Rudy Reyes.
question.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I know Rudy.
So Rudy's a recon guy. My brother's a Force Recon Marine,
Yep.
and that's how I learned about who Rudy was, Fruity Rudy. And I remember he made a post, dude, this was probably 10, 12 years ago.
Okay.
And I remember, because I would say this is probably pre-2000, this is 2010-ish, 2008, in and around that time frame. And I remember he made this really long, well-written post about him being all kinds of fucked up. And I remember reading the comments. It's like, you fucking pussy. Just getting...
Oh, really?
Dude, this is long before the term mental health had been thrown around. And I don't even, honestly, I could be wrong. Someone can fact check this. I don't even know that, like, PTSD or PTS was a thing that people talked about. This is, like, probably first 30% of the GWAT. Before the IEDs and stuff, all that crazy shit.
It was around, but you didn't talk about it because you're afraid they'd take your guns and fire.
Yeah, you couldn't go, you couldn't deploy anymore.
Yeah,
so you didn't even talk about it. And it was, I think PTS was kind of the first thing that came out, but then we started realizing that, like, TBI is where it really, that's like the root.
Yeah, but
issue.
he was the guy that this was right after, what was it, the TV show, not Band of Brothers, but Generation Kill.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
He was on that show, and it was right after that show. So this is, 2007 to 2010. And I remember reading the comments. You fucking cowards, you pussy. I mean, just literally, I think there was, like, just thousands of comments, and, like, people raked that guy over the coals.
Bro, it's so, it makes me sad to hear that stuff. I mean, it was reality.
Yeah.
But reality is, we served our country with these guys because we loved each other. In the moment, you didn't say, like, hey, man, I love you. Like, never said it. But that's reality. And then when guys are struggling, at least in those kind of early days, it's like you throw them out.
But
they're cast aside.
But even if you look at other issues in society, like, let's say, for example, same-sex marriage, someone that has never been exposed to that, their initial reaction is going to be rejection to hearing, like, two women or two men getting married.
Right.
But, with the thing with, like, Rudy, it's like once people have more exposure to it and it becomes more mainstream, that's when it gets accepted. And it takes that one person.
Yeah, it's honorable.
Just take that first step, come out and say, hey, man, I'm kind of fucked up. And all those guys that were talking shit probably were dealing with some of the same bullshit.
100%.
And I think about all the guys that didn't see that or didn't comment on it. They were like, motherfucker, man, like, shit, I'm feeling the same shit, man.
And I'm not going to say anything because of the way that I saw these guys
I don't want to get vilified.
Yeah, totally.
So I did some, contracting and whatnot, still in the Guard, so I see both sides, And as the medic, dudes are coming to me on a regular basis, and the symptoms are all the fucking same. Can't sleep, drink, just the list. So I get to hear it more than most. They might not tell their buddy, who they were in the Army together, but the medic gets to know a lot of shit. So all of a sudden I'm going, oh, yeah, I know that I'm fucked up. I should start saying something. I was always, sympathetic, empathetic. We talk about it. I give solutions that I had. I'd make suggestions about, like, hey, you probably shouldn't do A, B, or C because it's just going to make it worse, so on and so forth. But I would say around 2012 to 14, every fucking dude had the same problem going on. All of them. Dudes are like, yeah, man, I don't know why. Like, I'll struggle for a word, or I'll stutter. Like, I can't get out a thought. And I started, I guess I was lucky to be able to establish a pattern of these things before it was mainstream. And you could talk about it. Or the operator syndrome paper came out and shit like that. So it's.
So let's talk about this. Like, we've identified it. It's mainstream. All right. Guys struggle with all kinds of this and that. And now it seems like it's in a time where it's okay to, say I've got problems. So how do you fix this stuff? I know that's something you're working a lot on, and like, what are some of the things, treatments, and I know that like the boot campaign, we do a lot with those guys, and they're taking a 360-degree holistic approach: sleep, diet, nutrition, getting guys off alcohol, pills, getting them clean and sober, teaching them all that stuff. You know, like, what are some of the things that like you're working on? You're on the board of an organization with JT, one of our co-founders.
Yep. So I mean, I sit on the board with JT for Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions, nonprofit started by Marcus Capone, former development group guy.
6'5" Gold Squad guy.
Right.
He was on the TV show.
I think he was blue. But
Was he blue?
yeah, I believe so. Anyway,
6'5".
Let
Let me tell you something
Still
interesting
6'5".
about Marcus Capone. Marcus Capone was a quarterback at Northern Illinois and actually played Arena League football.
Southern Illinois.
When they were good.
Yeah.
And he played Arena League football for a few years back when the Arena League was legit.
Okay, I didn't know that about
Oh,
him.
yeah.
Okay.
He was on the show with like Bert and Ray Kashkar and what was that show? Selection.
The Selection.
Yeah.
So Marcus and I, my last shore duty job before I exited was running SEAL qualification training, and then Marcus was the assaults lead. You know, he had left Damnac and was dealing with his own issues, which, again, we were kind of like at the beginning, we're like, I really don't want to talk a lot about it, but
Right.
so he was trying to figure that stuff out. We connected there, and then, I mean, man, I think the first time I even heard an inkling about what Marcus was starting to dive into was at like a foundation fundraising event in passing. I hadn't seen Marcus in several years, and he's like, "Hey, man, we're doing some interesting stuff with microdosing psychedelics." And I'm like, "That's super weird."
Yeah.
Didn't talk about it at all.
How dare you?
Yeah,
I know, but it's foreign too.
Oh, it's
We're
totally
we're like,
foreign.
wait a second.
I'm a
no, not
Naval
allowed to.
Academy graduate.
Yeah.
How dare you speak
I
these
don't
words?
do any of that. I mean, I didn't smoke cigarettes. I didn't dip. I
Right.
never did an illicit drug. I was like, part of the DARE program.
Right.
Poster boy.
But Marcus and I crossed paths briefly on that, and then it was years later that I crossed paths with several guys that I respected deeply from our community that were vulnerable, right? Willing to be vulnerable with me in a casual conversation about them going to Mexico and taking 2 psychedelics, ibogaine and 5-MeO-DMT, during the course of a retreat. And they had this prolific kind of like catalytic healing experience that kind of launched them into a good place. I'm like, okay, this sounds insane. You know, you start vetting it amongst friends.
Right.
I reconnect with Marcus. I think we had a coffee in Del Mar or something like that. Like he comes back to San Diego, we connect and all that. And then I had a very long-winded answer, but I had a very close friend of mine, one of my closest friends from the SEAL teams that we reconnected with. You know, so I'm starting to do some of the things right? I'm like starting to build some connection, kind of talking to guys I served with. And he opened up to me. He had gone down, went through this program. He came back a changed person. I mean, I could see it in his eyes. Sitting across from him the night he came home from this retreat, I mean, his eyes were bright. His personality was different. Unlike anything, I mean, he was just like this cold, callous, violent person.
Angry as fuck. Yep.
Angry. And like he's smiling. He's like, has his daughter with him there. Like, and I'm like, dude, whatever you did, sign me up, man. I have nothing to lose. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it right now, brother.
You're making me think of my story. So
I was looking at your quad. You're getting goosebumps too.
I know. He's always looking
I
at.
thought it was me. You know?
He's always looking at my legs. I was in my backyard, living in Colorado. Dark spot, been there. Couldn't figure out how to get out. I did. I basically had to pay cash for everything and convince people to do these treatments because it wasn't super popular. So like stellate ganglion block and float tanks, gyrospin machine, EMDR. You know, I was paying for a counselor just to make sure it didn't get back to TRICARE and everything else. So I could talk to somebody. I learned about Military One Source, which is a great resource. That one has never bit me, and I'm still on the guard. But I met a guy. I wanted to go to college, or I thought I wanted to go to college. And we had gone out to Stanford to learn how to be students again. It's a program they do for yellow ribbon shit and whatever else. And a buddy of mine, he was an SF guy. He got shot up pretty bad. And we bonded immediately because we were the older guys, like done a bunch of combat things. And then there's younger folks, smarter than us, obviously getting out younger and figuring out school. And he called me up. And on that particular day, my kids were always kind of like my anchor. You know, I was always, Dad, hang out, do all the things. And I was feeling a certain way. I'm like, you know what, dude, why don't you guys go inside and like watch a show? And I had this really dark moment. My buddy calls me up and he's like, dude, how are you? It's the fucking weirdest thing. I just thought of you. He goes, yeah, I got one question for you. When was the last time you loved yourself? And I laughed in his face. He had just got back from his first ayahuasca ceremony.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, so there's a thing that can
go.
help. Now, granted, I'm in the military, so I don't get to partake.
Absolutely, yeah.
But let me tell everybody that I know of that's in the same boat, what that resource can be.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to get, this is a much longer conversation, for another time. But like the experience itself, and I say there's all kinds of different psychedelics out there. It's mainstream. It's being researched.
Mm-hmm.
Vets is a huge proponent of research, like promoting research with like Stanford and Ohio State and political advocacy. But the common thread is love. And self-love is something that, I would challenge pretty much anybody out there in society. Ask them that same question. When's the last time you really loved yourself? And you laugh. Oh, you laugh. You're
That's
like, oh,
the
yeah,
most
hey, don't talk about that.
It's the most outrageous thing in the world. Like, and then you think about it, you're like, oh, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, you know what? I treat everybody better than me.
I laughed and I said, I hate me. You know that. He
Yeah.
goes, dude, that's what I thought too. It was amazing.
So these guys come back from Mexico.
Yeah.
You're sitting with your buddy. His daughter's there. His eyes are lit up. Whatever you're done, sign me up.
Yeah. So he signed me up. I ended up going through the process. I can tell you that for me, again, much longer story, but there's a lead up, right? Dark days. I had a near-death experience in 2018. First introduction and kind of experience with psychedelics was 5-MeO DMT, which for me fully integrated my near-death experience. It showed me that I had so much to live for, and that's
awesome.
Dude, I'm like, I get emotional even
it's
thinking
good.
about it, brother.
No, it's good. So where were you when you did the DMT?
Out of the country.
Okay.
That's a huge thing that vets talks about, right? These things are still on schedule in the U.S. We have to go outside of our country, which is egregious,
Super sad.
To go get help. But you go out of country to Mexico or Costa Rica or someplace where it's not on schedule, it's illegal. And you have this prolific experience. And, I kind of did it, weird order. Typically they're sequenced and guys will go down and do Ibogaine. Mm-hmm. Day one, much longer experience. Day off, 5-MeO, much shorter experience, equally as intense. And then go home maybe a day or two later. Fully risk mitigated, therapeutic support, tons of prep work on the front end, huge focus on the integration, like the long-term kind of path you need to take, things you need to do foundationally to galvanize that healing and change.
Right.
But you go through this entire process. I had a 5-MeO experience.
So I want to talk about that real quick.
Okay.
So you did the handshake?
Yeah, you typically sequence with like a little mini microdose handshake.
Yeah. So when I did it, dude, I was scared shitless.
Everybody is.
Now, but let me say this, dude. So I've said 10,000 times I was never in the military. I have done an insane amount of psychedelics. Like with regards to mushrooms, I would challenge you to find someone that has grown, picked, dehydrated, eaten more than I have. Because I'm from my family has farms. Like I have memories of having at Rockingham Farms a hay barn that's 75 yards long and the entire second floor is dehydrated mushrooms. But what's interesting, and the reason I bring that up is because I think the first time I ate mushrooms I was 15. But I was a sophomore, but we had juniors and seniors and people that kind of guided us through the process. Like, you don't ever do it. You don't do it 3 days in a row. You don't do it 2 days in a row. Like this was before microdosing was a thing. We're talking back in the early 90s, what I mean? And so I've had a ton of experience with that, like ecstasy, recreationally, all that stuff. I've done a lot of that stuff. But the handshake thing, like I was terrified because I didn't know what was going to happen. Because I was like, well, I don't have like PTS or like, or maybe there is some trauma I don't know about, and maybe there's things locked away. Like, what the fuck's coming out of the box? And so
fear of the unknown is
oh God, because like dude, like out private school my whole life, I've lived a very, very charmed childhood. Like I didn't have any of these like little demon things, and I was scared shitless.
Little demon things.
I did, dude. Like I'm serious. I was absolutely terrified, and so people listening, and I'm kind of sharing my experience.
Absolutely.
So I was scared shitless. I didn't know what was going to happen. Like, am I going to shit my pants? Am I going to shove my fist up my ass? Like, what am I going to do? Like,
why is everything with your ass the fear?
Because we're dudes, man. And I was terrified. And so for me, it was a handshake, what they call. So you take like 3-second pull, 3-second hold. And it just kind of like walks you into, you open the door and you step into the room. And I just remember like the amount of heat radiating out of my palms. And I was just sitting there and I was just like, woohoo. I could do this recreationally. That in that moment, the first little piece. And it was like, okay, I'm good. Yeah, I want to do this. I want to do the hero dose. So that I did the big, 7-second pull, 7-second hold, and then laid back on this elk hide, and just I remember breathing, and like it was absolutely remarkable. And I was in real estate, and I lost everything that I had between 2008 and 2010, about $15 million. Went through a divorce. Where I'm from, Savannah, Georgia, I was the king of the mountain. Mm-hmm. I was the dude. And then I went from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain really quickly. And I had locked all that away. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't cause that. That was the economy at the time, the mortgage industry, all that stuff. But I had some investors that I didn't realize that I was still holding animosity towards. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say their names, but if I'd ever crossed paths with them, game on. Mm-hmm. And that's why I left my hometown. Just to get away from all these people. And like, I literally went through a Rolodex and forgave every single one of them. And I'm getting chills right now talking about this. And I remember like, and I didn't realize that I'd had that pent up.
Yeah.
And like, a bunch of other stuff in my life that like I'd come to peace and forgiven some other people, failed relationships, things like that, acknowledged my role in those failed relationships, realized how much I loved my mother and all this stuff, and like, just it was remarkable. And I remember it was like a kaleidoscope. When you're a kid in the kaleidoscope, you can collapse it in its little tiny things, or you can open it up. And I remember the whole time, the kaleidoscope was open and there was a little slit, and it's like, anytime, Baker, that you want to leave, you just jump right through that little crack and you're going to be good to go. And I was like, you know what? I got more to deal with than this. So I didn't I came through, came up, and I looked at Logan, I looked at JT, and I was like, I'm ready to start my life over. And like I started crying. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And then but like and then I called Melissa. I get a little emotional, but I called Melissa
emotional.
I called her that.
Yeah.
I called her that next morning, and I was just like, hey, I need you to do this as well. Like I want you to try this at some point, because she and I talked about it, and it was like, I don't know, it was amazing. And so I guess the point in sharing that story is like, I was terrified because I get performance anxiety, and like I don't ever want to be viewed as anything other than like who I am.
Yeah.
And anyone listening, like the handshake, like you don't have to just go jump into the deep end. You have this handshake, and it just kind of eases you in, and then the door opens and you step in. You're like, all right, let's go into some other rooms. It was remarkable.
Well, brother, to continue on that thread, because I think it's a really important comment. Consider that handshake all the work, all the foundational work that if you truly want to get something out of this stuff, the psychedelic is a catalytic micro experience in a lifelong journey that's going to take you to a point of wholeness. And the more work you put in on the front end and the more work you put in on the back end, the more profound the change and the healing and the impact is going to be in that moment.
And I wouldn't describe it as a psychedelic experience. It's a journey, but it's not like, I wouldn't describe DMT as a psychedelic trip for me.
Well, 5-MeO DMT, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah, the strong one.
Is very, very, I mean, I can share with sincerity, I drowned in 2018. When I experienced drowning, I re-experienced in that first time sitting with 5-MeO DMT.
Oh, wow.
And it was very beautiful. And it was terrifying in the beginning, right? It's like confronting the fact of like all this self-hate and all this suppressed grief. And it was just like taking everything and evaporating it and bringing me to a singularity, which was love, and it was manifested in the love that I have for my kids. When I drowned, I felt like I was with both of my children, and I longed. All I wanted in that moment of death or near death was to have both my son and my daughter in my arms and hugging them. Didn't care about a single other thing in the moment. And when I took the first big rip off of the pipe. Never thought I would say those words ever. I laid back, and I was kneeling next to my little boy, and just watching him play with his trucks and feeling the love that I have for that little guy. And like I realized, I'm like, it's all about that. I mean, like you want to talk about like inner divinity. People throw that word out there, and like people are like, whatever, you know. Truly knowing God, and I don't care what faith you profess to, is loving yourself and feeling that love for others, you know, completely without strings attached, and wanting nothing in return. And it gifted me that. And it's all, and like when you say it's not like psychedelics, people talk about like, oh, I saw all this shit, and like it's a feeling, it's a visceral feeling that you take and hold with you for the rest of your life.
And it's interesting because you don't see anything that's not there necessarily, or that you haven't seen with your own eyes. You're not hallucinating. And I lost my thought. It's a lifetime of therapy inside of, I think I was under 16 minutes or 9 minutes or something like that.
Well, I mean, think about what you said. You forgave a Rolodex of humans in a matter of a moment. You found self-love in a matter of a moment. You reminded yourself of how much you love your kids, and it's all about them, and it's all about giving love like that. How many sessions do you sit in talking to somebody?
It could be a lifetime.
I've done it for
you can never
years.
do it.
So I took Ritalin from the time I was in second grade through college.
Okay, now it explains a lot.
No, and I'm telling you, hold on, I needed it. And so, like, it was to get Ritalin, you had to go see a psychiatrist or something like that. So I'd go and sit in with these people and sit there for an hour and just, I don't know, nothing would become of it. But, like, it's interesting, like, it's a lifetime of, like, therapy sessions in a very brief period of time. But what I walked away is that, like, self-therapy. You know what happened. And, like, I don't think that you or anyone that's dealt with this stuff you guys could sit down with a therapist and truly get them to understand exactly. They can look at it from a scientific standpoint, but they don't know exactly what was happening in the moment. You were there. You can do this. You are your best therapist.
Yeah.
And so what it does, it gives you it empowers you to relive stuff, deal with stuff, acknowledge stuff. Like, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It is.
And you don't have to be a fucking SEAL or a PJ or a Ranger or whatever for this to have an impact on your life. Like, I'm just a regular dude, and it was remarkable for me.
People in this country, I mean, are committing suicide daily. Yeah. And it's not just veterans. I mean, it's
kids.
There's kids. Yeah. I mean, the problem with childhood suicide is it's terrible. No one wants to talk about it, right? Because it's the most morose, morbid subject you can bring up.
Some kid hanging themselves from bullying at the age of 12 because of social media.
And losing a child. I have a sidebar or little tangent.
Caveat, sure.
I was introduced to a gentleman who's committed to helping kids kind of confront mental health issues because his son was, I think, 14 years old, killed himself while him and his wife were in Mexico, in Cabo on vacation, and got a text message from him, and then he was gone.
Fuck.
I mean, like, to lose a child, man, I've never been in the depths of darkness that would bring me to. And that shit is rampant in this country. It's not just for veterans, right?
No, it's a perfect storm of, call it what you will, social media, fucking COVID or whatever. I was talking to somebody the other night, like, my son, COVID really affected him. I don't metabolize it. I don't metabolize it that way, but it is a real thing, and you need to be sympathetic to it. But the way I look at it is, with the psychedelics being looked at, I was thinking back to about 2013, which was the first time I was introduced to EMDR, right? So trying to store and fix some thoughts. You don't actually have to talk during the therapy. The therapist talks to you while you're processing things, you're moving your eyes back and forth, and it's a way to physically manifest the storing of memories. This is the bro science explanation. But it sounds to me, and having not being able to partake, which is also a tragedy, the fact that, let me stop. Could you drive a car later that afternoon?
Absolutely.
Would you have shot a gun?
Yeah, absolutely. You're
How about you?
Yeah.
Same?
The ever did DMT? Absolutely.
Okay, great. So you're telling me that there's a therapy that we could treat people that are in, but it's so hush-hush, it's so Don't touch it. You know what I mean? But yet we will promote and discount ethanol and alcohol and sell it. And it's a culture that's totally fine. Like, hey, just got back from a deployment, killed a bunch of dudes, and we're all fucked up in the head. Let's get hammered. Let's get super fucking drunk so that we can make it all a whole bunch worse. So that bothers me.
You know what's interesting about that is, like, one of the things with DMT and psychedelics is that you're not judged. And I think one of the things is, like, you know, guys with your background, you want to tell your stories and be vulnerable and stuff, but you don't want to be judged. No one wants to be fucking judged. And I think, you know, you were just saying guys get back from deployment, they go out and they all get shit-faced.
Or drink
hold on. What happens when you drink? You talk more. Maybe that's the way if they get drunk and they sit around and they talk about it. They talk about the war, they're shooting people, missions, and all that stuff. And maybe that can be some degree of coping mechanism.
I don't talk
but
about
the alcohol, but the alcohol is bad. But the talking is good.
I you know what? Sure, maybe in a team room someplace. But when you're an adult and you go home to your spouse and you don't want to talk to your spouse about whatever the fuck happened.
No, I'm talking about when you go out with your boys drinking. And tell
I was just
war
with my
stories.
boys. I was just don't tell war stories. He was there. Don't need to tell him shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But when I go back and I integrate back into normal life and I'm drinking and I'm fucking off, I don't talk to anybody about anything. So valid point. Yes, I understand.
Yep.
But it's not the way it looks when you watch Navy SEALs and they all go out and then they all come back and they all hang out together. You're like, fuck, dude, I was just with that guy for a couple months.
Look, that culture is like it's fostered, right? That is approved. Like, you need to be part of the boys. You got to be going out and drinking.
I thought you guys all went down to the beach and made little fires and shit.
Well,
and
we
drank
I mean, that's just in the
like
SEAL
in the
teams.
movies.
In the SEAL teams, we do that. But I mean, I can't speak for the other branches of service. But yeah, I mean, here's the issue with alcohol, and I'm not demonizing alcohol, right? I can tell you that we have an issue, right?
Agreed.
Guys leave the service, and I've watched guys kind of go through this process, and alcohol is like the number one culprit.
Yep.
I mean, it's a number one numbing mechanism, and it throws you into a tailspin. I mean, we talk about like TBI and kind of brain health and all this stuff there. I mean, alcohol's not doing you any favors.
Well, you're literally rinsing the thiamine off your brain, which is like fucking
It's horrible.
on a regular
Andrew
basis.
Huberman has a wonderful podcast. He did one specifically on alcohol, and it was amazing because he told people the shit that they didn't want to hear, right? Like, alcohol technically doesn't do you any good at all. I mean,
There's no upside to it from a physiological standpoint.
And I'm not, and again, not demonizing it, right?
No.
You can, if you can handle it, and you're having a couple drinks a week, and you do it socially and all that stuff, great. A lot of us use it as an absolute crutch and disassociative measure to not confront emotion, deal with real problems, deal with real stuff that they need to address.
Agreed. And to go back, because I get squirrel brain when we talk about this thing, but I was drawing a parallel between the EMDR and what it was designed to do. We have a fast forward button. It sounds like, with psychedelic therapy as it pertains to this. So, like, why not figure that out? And it is being figured out, and there's white papers and studies, and you guys are on the board, which is fantastic. And I spoke to JT about it in the past. But just moving forward, again, talk about it, right? See what's going on. But the problem I have is, and the part I will demonize, is the VA treating somebody, right? They come back, and we all know the story, but it starts with potentially alcohol. Let's say they're drinking.
Sure.
But then they also have injuries or migraines or whatever, and the first thing they like to throw at them, because it's no big deal. It's a synthetic opiate, just a little tramadol, which turns into oxy, which turns into fucking suicide, like,
or heroin.
who the fuck knows?
Sure.
But those drugs they're getting from the VA, because that's here's your symptom, here's your pills.
Yep.
Not any sort of
you just
holistic
made
approach.
It worse. You made that guy's situation so much worse.
They're treating a symptom, not the cause of the.
Absolutely.
Correct.
And that's the reality.
It's like my wrist hurts. Well, your shoulder's probably tight.
Yep.
Take a
Totally.
pain, muscle relaxer. No, let's fix my shoulder.
Well, but so we address physical injuries. Not to say that this isn't physical, but we address a shoulder injury differently than we address mental health.
Right.
Agreed.
This is cutting down to the core. And it's like okay, let's figure out what is causing this stuff, and let's not just put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
Let's actually fix the root cause.
I want to do this. So we got your history. Fantastic. Your involvement with mental health, like, I couldn't appreciate it more. And the fact that you're coming on and talking about it. Where did Protekt come in all this journey that you've done?
So here's my take on this stuff. It's multimodal, right? There's no one-stop shop. So whether it's EMDR, traditional therapy, hyperbaric oxygen, psychedelics, every person's different, and they may need a whole bunch of these things. They may need one of these things. The common thread is that you need to take care of yourself, right? Like, so Protekt, our company, was born out of providing people tools to help galvanize foundational practices that are going to lead to the things that they need happening every single day to start feeling better. Alongside these kind of profound experiences or these really impactful modalities. So we focus on hydration and sleep. And then I'd like to say we focus on building connection or encouraging connection by getting people outside. I was probably perpetually dehydrated. And,
we all are. Court low.
And we talked about it with wrestling, right? Like wrestling and MMA fighters, dehydration is a real thing. Most of us will just be like, I'll just, drink my coffee and I'm good in the morning.
Or I'll drink a glass of water before I go to bed at night.
Totally, yeah.
I'm good.
Not doing yourself any favor.
I drink 16 ounces before I go to bed every night. It's like, no, don't do that.
And it's probably worse because then you're going to get up in the middle of the night and have to take a piss.
And then if you have issues you're dealing with, you're going to remember the last thing that pissed you off, and you would get up at 3 to take a leak, and you remember what pissed you off, and then you can't go back to sleep. Yeah.
So we did it to say, like, hey, let's help people hydrate, put more water in their body, put the proper ratio of electrolytes. And we have a whole bunch of liquid stick packs you add to water. So we're encouraging people to drink more water. If you can hydrate better, it's going to have a positive impact on your sleep. If your sleep gets better, you're going to feel better. And for me, it's not as much as like focusing on the body. Like, I've been an athlete my entire life. I think most of us have. I've totally overlooked the mind and kind of performance mentally. So like, I look at this as these are tools to help support this growing as a muscle and, supporting the daily practices, post these kind of peak catalytic experiences and really focusing on like meditation, whatever it is for you, meditation, breath work, yoga, prayer. It doesn't make a difference.
I hate yoga.
I did yoga right before I showed up here today.
I go to yoga twice a week. I go to yoga twice a week now.
You told us that.
I do a slow flow.
Yeah.
And I register online for the class at night, and I hate that. I get anxiety. I'm like, I fucking hate this. I don't want to go. I wake up. It's Monday and Wednesday at 10 a.m. I wake up in the morning like thinking, man, fuck this place. I don't want to go to yoga. Driving over there, I'm pissed because I hate it. I hate every moment of the class. But there's never been a yoga class that I've walked out of that I wasn't glad I went to.
100%.
So the things, I'm 45, and the two components as you get older is elasticity and longevity of tissue. Yep. And yoga, you're going to suck at it. Like there are things everything I've ever done, I've always been good at. Like I put the time and energy, I refer to myself as a starter. Last fucking place in yoga.
Every time.
Nationally, I am the worst. I'm ranked last in the world. It's so bad, dude. Like, and it's all these older women. And so my personal email is bakerblack@gmail. Black's my middle name, and so it comes up. They think my name is Black, so they call me Blackie in class. So I go, hey Blackie. Do you need a baluster? I was like, yes, please. So like I'm so bad at it, but I feel remarkable afterwards.
You do?
Yeah.
I mean, I literally before I showed up here, I had some time to kill, and I went to a hot yoga class.
That's awesome.
45 minutes, and I agree your sentiment. I haven't done yoga in like 8 years, and
shit.
I went with my wife for the first time on Tuesday to get back into it, and I was terrible. Felt horrible, was struggling, my foot was cramping.
Oh, yeah, you're shaking like a leaf. Like,
I'm like pouring, like it wasn't even that hot in the room, and I'm like, I think I dumped 3 liters of water.
There's not a woman in this class that could last with me more than 5 seconds in an octagon. And here they are dragging my ass. It's humility. Like I'm like, you know what? I don't expect to be able to. I'm not as flexible as them. But like I just go in and I do what I can do.
Sure.
And if they're doing a movement that I can't do, or transition into another, I'll just stay in the one that I'm like, well, I'm stretching the shit out of my my groin right now. I'm just going to hold this. So sometimes there'll be 3 movements down the class, and I'll just be stuck in like Happy Baby or something. Like I'm serious.
You do look like a happy baby.
I would agree.
I look around in the hot yoga, so I went a couple times. I was like, I don't know, 6-8 months ago, and immediately I'm into it. I'm okay with it. Like I'm a halfway flexible human, but immediately in the hot yoga, I'm looking around and I have a sheen on me. I'm slipping off the mat.
It's infuriating. It's
I'm
infuriating.
slipping off the mat, and I'm looking at these other people like, why do I sweat so much more than you?
I know.
I'm like a
man,
fucking salamander.
I leave a pool of water. I feel terrible. I'm like trying to clean it up with whatever dry. There is no dry part in my towel.
Well,
I'm
they
like
give it-
sopping it up with more sweat.
Yeah, or when you don't bring a towel and they give you a towel and it's only this big.
Yeah.
You know, it's a, what am I doing for the listeners?
like
24 by 12.
No, but it's like I'm going to
It's
start.
sopping wet. 7 minutes in, I'm
I'm going to start wearing cleats because I get so mad when my feet slip. But you know, one of the things that the most damning thing is like Melissa will go with me from time to time, and like we'll be doing this position, and I'm just sucking ass, and I'm like, this is awful, and I'll look over, and she'll just be completely in the position and smiling at me like, you're doing great, and I'm like, shut the fuck up and stop looking at me.
And don't make it look easy.
You stop looking at me. In fact, move your mat over there. Stop looking
You're
at
judging me.
Yeah,
I
I
know.
feel like there should be a buy-in. So you should have to do, I don't know,
Deadlift 4 or 5.
6 deadlifts, 315 at the door.
It's out of here. Oh man.
Baker's the only one in the class today.
Yeah, just me and Depot, the instructor. But anyway, so Protekt, the products that they make that I'm a huge fan of. I take the Clarity,
Lion's Mane.
I take
Complex.
2 before every podcast.
Why have you not shared?
Because I haven't thought about it.
You're
Selfish. I don't
are you
have
sure
kids.
it works?
It's all,
focus-
all focused on the mind.
I'm too busy loving myself, dog. But the Clarity, I'm a huge fan of that. I like the plant-based BCAAs for cycling.
And they're getting better too.
Yeah, I
We
like
just
those.
upgraded them.
And then the hydration, big fan of that because I like to ride a road bike for exercise. And I hate sleep aids. I won't take melatonin. I don't take ZMA. I don't need anything to fall asleep because if I take the sleep aids or CBD and stuff like that, I'll fall asleep, I'll pass out, and then at 3 o'clock, I'm wide ass awake because it's worn off.
Sure.
I live in Florida at sea level. When I come out to Utah, I'm at altitude, and I cannot sleep worth a shit out here. Neither can Michael Shea. It's something we complain about. So I brought a pack of Rest with me, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this stuff. So normally I go to bed out here anywhere between, depending if we have dinner, 10 to 11:30, and I wake up at 4:10, wide ass awake. This trip, this week, every morning I'm waking up between 6:16 and 6:23.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's because of the rest. Shay said the same thing. We were talking about it before. He's like, yeah, dude, it's like I can sleep through the night. And it's fantastic. So
I love it.
those are the products that they make that I am a huge fan of. The Clarity, the BCAAs on workout days. I like hydration because I live in Florida. You sweat your ass off all the time. You get out of the shower, you dry off briskly. You're sweating. And the Rest now. I'm huge fan of the Rest.
Yeah, and the whole point with Rest is we didn't use melatonin. Melatonin's a hormone.
Groggy.
You become
super-
you become dependent on it, right?
Yep.
Your body will stop producing it if you're taking it consistently. So we work on the GABA system. So GABA, L-theanine, and valerian root to just relax you, put you in a state of mind so you're ready to go to sleep.
Okay, so
No
huge fan.
grogginess. Huge fan of the no grogginess.
Yep.
Yep, same. Because I've had to try all the things over the years. Calm with melatonin, and I wake up feeling shitty every
I
time.
hate it.
It's horrible. Melatonin straight, Z-Quil, whatever the fuck they call it, or Sleep Ease. Your Rest is the only one that actually works for me. Now, good or bad, I've taken 2 at a time before.
I have as well.
Okay, because I was like, man, I'm going, and I like turn on my little meditation thing, and I'm like, I'm gonna do 2 tonight because I know
the amount of each of those active ingredients is low enough that you could take 2 and you're fine. I think 2 is kind of like where I would probably stop.
Okay. Yeah, no, I would never do any more than that.
You're
But
a PJ,
also,
double the dose and hope for the most.
well, but also, I noticed because I saw your new packaging, so I went on the website just to see what it looked like because I'd seen the more rectangular packages over the last.
Gen 1 packaging with the square sachets. We went to the stick pack.
Nowhere does it say keto, and I'm big on this. I don't fuck around.
Yeah,
I will
yeah.
look at vitamins and go, no, fuck no. There's like or something, and there's a carb
Yeah.
in there because I do the keto-y shits, but none of your shit has sugar.
None
in
of
it.
it. Yeah, we use
Which is-
stevia. So
Yeah, it's fantastic.
yeah, so no sugar, no junk. I mean, we tried to keep everything as simple as humanly possible, right? And literally, they're tools, right? They're tools to get you to drink more water and sleep better. So even if you walked away from all of our stuff, if you start to galvanize that routine of hydration and your sleep is improving, I feel like we did our job.
Yeah.
Now I want you to do it. be a customer forever, but
Yeah, I need rest forever. I struggle with sleep. No shit. Baker gave me 2 on the first day. First 2 nights, take it, boom, out, wake up, in the gym, everything's great.
Yeah.
Last night I was like, fucking Baker.
You
Didn't
didn't
have it.
any, yeah?
I didn't fall asleep till 3:30 in the morning. Got it here. I'm like, fuck, I feel like shit. So, anyways, I love the product. It's fantastic.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome to hear it from people.
All right, so where can they find you?
So Protekt.com, and that's the company.
Spell it.
PROTEKT.com. And then you can find me if somebody wants to talk to me about mental health. I mean, I really enjoy that.
Yeah, please.
I'm on Instagram. I think Nick Norris 1981. I think.
Yeah.
You find me. You
Where
can see
they
my
find
happy.
Tim Duba?
1980.
Tim Duba.
St. Augustine, Florida.
You
Amelia
should.
Island?
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Give everybody his personal email address,
Cell phone, all that good stuff.
cell phone number.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Instagram for me. I mean, Instagram and Protekt, and then the website. But yeah, I'm serious about the mental health thing. I mean, the thing that fires me up, the whole reason this company even exists, is because I want to try doing something like give somebody a tangible tool to do the things that you need to do forever.
Yeah.
And then be an advocate with vets and other organizations that are really moving the needle. I mean, they're doing the hard work to kind of get this stuff available to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
if I could do that solely for the rest of my life and just be able to help people that are struggling, my life would be better off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Outstanding.
Then for the people watching this on YouTube, I haven't asked legal or anyone for approval or permission. We're going to throw a discount code up in the comment section on our YouTube page. So if you want to try the products out, go to BRCC Podcast YouTube page, look in the description of this episode, and we'll have a discount code in there. Try some of this stuff out.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Watermelon's new as
Oh,
well.
man, it
Yeah,
tastes
the green box.
Delightful.
It's
wonderful.
my favorite now.
Yep.
And it's like
I like the yellow.
I
don't
that.
assign fruits because nothing tastes like fruit. I assign colors. Yeah,
Well,
I like the purple.
I like green and black.
Yeah,
So we'll go
green and
with
black is now my favorite, but I do like yellow.
Yeah. Rolf, one last thing. What's up with the logo? Where'd it come from?
So it's a rooted T, right? So Protekt is in the center of the word, so easy to target that one. But rooted T, right? So we're trying to establish kind of like the foundational practices that people need. So it's like building stronger roots, right? Through those routines and those best practices.
That's
and then
awesome.
I also thought it kind of started to look like a grounded symbol, which means the same thing. But if you're an electrician out there, grounded symbol is like that little line with 2 little lines going the other way.
Yeah.
So it worked out that way. But yeah, I mean that's what it's all about: creating those simple foundational routines to keep you grounded and you don't tip over when it gets windy out.
I like
Right.
it.
No, that was outstanding. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh,
man. It was
absolute
fantastic.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right.
That concludes today's training. Any questions? Whew! Drum titties, boy!